me, he seems to be on a mission. Only he's fully aware of what it is.
He's really persistent and tries lots and lots of things, and he's extremely charming.
We do have a problem here. It's a safety issue.
He just wasn't just a whale. He was brought here for some reason.
That was my greatest honor, was being able to be his friend.
It must have been like a child getting lost in a supermarket. He was just wandering up an aisle, turned around, and his family was gone. Then, he went looking for them. Nobody was there. This little whale is special to me. He and I came from the same place. I grew up in Canada, on the west coast of British Columbia, and he was born in the sea near my home. Where I grew up, everyone loves these orcas. Scientists know each one by markings. So when the little whale was born, he was given a number, L98, and a nickname, Luna. My family's like most people. We all scattered as the kids grew up. But it's not like that with orcas. These big families stay together for life, hunting, playing, and whistling through the sea. Aunts and uncles, brothers, sisters, grandmothers, daughters, grandsons. Personally, this would drive me to the brink of insanity. But with orcas, it's perfectly natural. In these close families, nobody just gets lost, but somehow, Luna did. In the winter, these whales travel far. People don't see them much, so no one really knows how it happened. But one day, in a fjord called Nootka Sound on the west coast of Vancouver Island, about 200 nautical miles from his family's summer home, Luna found himself alone. He was less than 2 years old. Much later, when scientists came to listen with hydrophones, they found out that in his solitude, Luna called out every day. But only the deep rocks answered. One day, not long ago, journalists Mike Parfit and his wife, Suzanne Chisholm, returned to the town of Gold River on Nootka Sound. It was the last of many journeys in the making of this film. Years before, they'd come just to write a short magazine article. Now they were coming back to old friends and familiar places and the story of the lost whale who changed their lives. When they first came here years ago, they hadn't planned to make a film. They certainly didn't plan to get involved in the story themselves, and they didn't plan to break any rules. But all those things happened, and a lot more that nobody expected. And Suzanne and Mike and I are here to tell you why.
This is a place called Muya Bay. There's a logging camp back there and a kind of a wide spot in Nootka Sound up here. And this is where Luna showed up, out in this part of Nootka Sound.
And it all started right here, just like an old-fashioned adventure story. You know, the sea, the ship, the journey. The old freighter called the Uchuk 3 travels up and down Nootka Sound almost every day, bringing supplies to the logging camps and the fishing resorts scattered along the shores. One July day, Donna Schneider, the ship's cook, looked out the galley door and saw something she'd remember forever.
Yeah, we saw him right in this area here, Muya Bay.
Quite often I look at where we've been. I look back and I could see this whale in our wake. So I run up to Sean and he said, I was looking at that and he goes, I think it's a pilot whale. And then we came back and then we saw it. I said, Sean, that's not a pilot whale, that's an orca. So we just sort of sailed on by and you see him and then you think, oh, well, we won't see him again. Kept showing up. And then when we kept seeing him, we sort of went, something weird here.
Many people hope that someday we'll meet an intelligent being from another world. Hollywood tells us this stranger will come flying down in a spaceship. And he'll look a bit like us. Most importantly, he'll have a mind like ours. And we'll figure out how to communicate right away. But maybe it won't be like that. Maybe it'll be like this. A few months after Luna was first seen, he started to pop up at boats and docks in Muya Bay, as if to say hello.
That whale needs and wants and craves attention. It was incredibly surreal, and I remember being amazed that he wanted to see us as much as we wanted to see him.
People here responded with a funny combination of awe and disbelief and compassion. I think when they saw this little whale all alone, they recognized that he needed something.
We were coming back on Sunday afternoon. It was in Muya Bay, and he just came right up to the boat, and he was under the boat, and he just looked so lonely.
He was just like a little lost pup, and it just broke your heart, though, to leave him, because you know he's all alone, and he just wants that interaction.
I mean, right off the bat, you're going, oh man, this thing isn't like a reptile or something. It's got emotions. I mean, that big guy would look and bring his eye right there, and he's looking at you. It wasn't like a dog sniffing your leg or something.
He was communicating. He would come up and roll on his side and look right at you. And
you know, that's not a predator or something. That's somebody just wanting to bond. If you look in his eye, you know, there's more there than most of my guess.
Orcas live about as long as humans, and Luna was only 2. Scientists weren't sure he could survive on his own.
Such a young killer whale all by itself countered everything we thought we knew about killer whales. We thought that it would be like laying a baby in the forest. He's Mowgli the Jungle Boy of whales.
There are times in your life when you reach a point you say, this will be with me till the day I die.
Fisheries officer Ed Thorburn was told, keep an eye on the little whale.
Definitely pushing it towards us, that's for sure. Trying to get us wet, are you?
It turned out that Luna was getting plenty of fish. He didn't seem hungry at all, but he kept coming up to Ed's boat and doing things like this.
Well, well, what a sight. So he had this little piece of wood. So he came and he bounced it on his nose. And then he just flipping it back past his blowhole. I was thinking he was entertaining himself. And I didn't realize it was probably something to do with socializing as well.
If he wasn't hungry, maybe he was just lonely.
Killer whales have social needs that are as strong as those of humans, perhaps more so. In fact, I think I'd stick my neck out and say they really are stronger than humans. I'm sure you could damage a whale psychologically by depriving it of contact.
But Lance was talking about contact with other whales. This little guy didn't have any whales. So he apparently decided that if you can't be with the species you are, make friends with the species you're with.
I'd say personality-wise, he sort of knew what he wanted. He was somehow spunky. He was lively. He was engaging. He was kind of pushy. I would say he was sort of an outside-the-envelope kind of whale.
I touched him! Now I touched him that much.
You know, how can you not touch the whale when he comes over there? My granddaughter, my littlest granddaughter, I'm the queen of the whale touchers. You know, it was a beautiful feeling communicating with an animal like that. Did I scare you?
Don't you bite me. Don't you bite me.
He was very gentle. Like you'd be petting him like on his nose and stuff, and he would just start to open his mouth, and then I would just slowly put my hand in, and he would open his mouth right up. His tongue is very raspy.
My heart just goes like this when I get close to his mouth. I just get so like a fight. Are you recording this? Okay, what was that, Fred?
You always wish that you could communicate with wild animals like that. And when a wild animal actually comes and makes contact with you, it's an amazing thing.
The first thing that comes into my mind when I see all of this is that, of course, Luna was looking for friends. But friendship, that's a human idea. Scientists call it anthropomorphism when we use human ideas like friendship to describe animals' feelings. And for years, they've said that was wrong.
That's one of those words that the anthropomorphic police would not let you use for a long time, with sort of friendships and animals.
But as scientists have learned more about the way humans and animals experience similar emotions, some now use words like friendship themselves.
Whales have developed friendships, and understanding how friends interact with each other is great stuff.
But how should humans interact with a friendly whale? Nobody knew, but a lot of people wanted to find out.
When news of the whale started to travel, people, they just got really excited. You know, they know we'd see him, so they go, hey, have you seen the whale? Did you see the whale? And, oh, yeah, I saw him. You know, I'd be really excited. You know, everywhere you went, people were talking about Luna.
Like many residents around Nootka Sound, Luna went to work in the timber industry. Some of the crews said they ought to get him goggles and a hard hat, put him on the payroll. Ed Thorburn started calling him Bruno.
I thought, boy, Luna's it's a girl's name. So I thought, well, here he's playing with logs. I mean, he's pushing 40-footers around. But I just referred to him as Bruno because it was more appropriate to what he was doing, and he was a boy, and I thought, you know.
Ed got so interested that he did some research, particularly about whether this baby whale was dangerous.
I mean, there have been incidents where killer whales have been responsible for deaths, you know, like in aquariums. But there is no history of a killer whale ever having a nasty experience purposely with a human in the wild. He likes us, it seems, so we like him. Which you can never tell that with a cougar or a grizzly bear, whether they like you or they want to eat you, you know.
How often in our lives do we have a chance to be this close to something this phenomenal and share some space and some time and some moments?
We humans build a wall in our minds out of fear and respect between ourselves and wild beings. Luna was breaking it down.
When he pops up and he looks at you, you can see, I mean, the eyes are the window to the soul.
You know, words escape me sometimes, because you just look at him, and he would look at you in the eye, and you would be mesmerized or something. Look like he was just looking right into you.
You know, the way that he regarded you in a fairly studied kind of way, and in a sort of contemplative way, you had the feeling that he knew what he was doing.
You know, killer whales, they come in all the time. They come up and they'll try to steer away from you all the time, stuff like that. But for a killer whale to be interested in you,
he just had a way of getting inside of me, inside of my head, into my heart. And it seems like my spirit or my soul, like my fémarsti, was dancing.
When Suzanne and I first got to Nootka Sound and started watching Luna from the shore, we had that same feeling of kinship, even from that distance. But why? How could an animal so different that you could almost call him an extraterrestrial have anything in common with human beings?
But maybe he did. Once, we humans thought animals were here just to serve us. Once, philosophers said they had no thoughts. But today, while radio astronomers listen for other voices in space, biologists are listening to other minds here at home. Right here on Earth, there is now evidence that lives we once barely noticed are both more mysterious and more familiar than we had ever imagined. Whales have been in the sea for 50 million years. Humans have been on land for as long as we know. But both of us built our survival by learning to depend on family and friends. So, in our separate ways, both humans and orcas have learned the same thing. In solitude, we are incomplete. We cannot bear it. Many scientists think that this kind of complex social life requires the most intricate intelligence of all. You have to be smart to get along. So maybe that's why this seems so strange and wonderful. Maybe Even when we humans looked in Luna's eyes, we saw something we recognized. The intent, the awareness, and the longing of a fully conscious life.
We're living in historic times. It's just so powerful that it's really a hard thing to explain.
The intensity of this contact meant different things to different people. At the mouth of Nootka Sound, there's a point of land in a little cove. There's a lighthouse here and an old church. The people who now call themselves the Moichet-Muchelut First Nations have lived here for over 4,000 years. For the Moichet-Muchelut people, tradition explained what was going on.
So there's supernatural creatures in our belief system. Clyatsik is the wolf. He's one of our most respected creatures on the land. His counterpart in the ocean is the orca. He's connected with truth and justice.
The band's old chief, Ambrose McQuina, died the week Luna showed up. He told his friend Jerry Jack that he'd come back as an orca.
I'm 74, he said. I'm getting closer to heaven. He was really happy. When I go home, he said, I'm going to come back as a cuckoo. And man, it happened. It happened.
The First Nations started calling Luna Sukit, Ambrose's nickname. To them, he didn't just raise questions. He promised answers.
To me, he seems to be on a mission. Only he's fully aware of what it is.
He just wasn't just a whale. He was brought here for some reason.
He's the wolf of the sea, and we hold him in the highest regard. You know, like I put my life on the line for his protection. It's just no questions asked, I'd do it.
That summer, Luna turned 3 years old. Now there was another intense reaction to all this contact. Some people thought it was wrong.
When I heard that Luna was alone, it was kind of like my heart, my heart clunked.
He might come up and bump and not...
Tony Frohoff is a biologist. Sometimes in other parts of the world, solitary whales or dolphins try to make contact with human beings. Tony studies those rare events.
You see in the media a lot of the really beautiful aspects. That's the light side of it, but there's a very, very dark side. The dark side is the human side.
There's always risk of injury to the people. There is always risk of injury to the whale.
One of the whales Kathy Kinsman tried to protect was a little beluga named Echo. Echo played with people in Newfoundland. But one day, he came back to the dock with this. This was one of only a few times Kathy herself interacted with a whale. The veterinarian told her that attention might help support Echo's immune system. So Kathy spent all her daylight hours by Echo's side for 2 weeks as he tried to heal. Echo survived. But this kind of pain is tragically common.
In the long term, our research has shown the more interaction dolphins and whales have with people, the more likely they are to suffer injury and death.
So it became this huge dilemma on Nootka Sound for people who cared about Luna. Your natural instinct was to give Luna that attention that he was looking for, but what if it was dangerous for him? What were you supposed to do?
At the West Coast office of the Canadian Department of Fisheries and Oceans, there was a firm answer. Stay away from him.
I think that's my underlying philosophy that I try to get message out every day when it comes to other marine mammals. I really want nature to go about its business with the least interference from us, really. You're being a friend by staying away.
I felt that he was desperately lonely and needed this contact. But everything I was told was it was a bad thing to do, so that's where I stood.
So that summer, a group of organizations joined to bring a kind of tough love to Nootka Sound, to rebuild the wall between us and wild beings that Luna was breaking. It was called stewardship.
Hey guys, it's an offense under the Fisheries Act to touch this whale.
It came to us.
Yeah, but you stopped and you actually came right out in the middle of the area. There's been a lot of public attention on this whale. It's up to a $100,000 fine under the Fisheries Act to disturb the animal.
The young women were idealistic, sincere, and determined.
Where did you... Please don't touch it.
Okay, leave it alone, Dave.
When I was 21, I would have given anything to have a summer job like this. Babysitting a whale. Awesome. But this wasn't fun. They had to be the bad guys and tell people to stop doing something incredible. And Luna was absolutely no help at all.
Folks, this is not a watchable whale, okay? I need you to exit the area. Watching this whale or interacting with this whale can be subject to a $100,000 fine under the Fisheries Act. This whale is not watchable. This is not stopping this area altogether.
Okay.
Watching him can be considered disturbance under the Fisheries Act. Gradually increase speed. Get out of here, high speed. Try and keep your speed up. High speed out of here. Increase your speed, thank you. Keep your speed up. Increase your speed. Increase your speed. Don't slow down. Faster. Just increase your speed slowly.
In the beginning, people were very receptive. They were very, oh, okay, thank you very much, and we're out of here.
Michelle Keeler was one of the stewards.
And then it was amazing the amount of boats that had engine troubles right in Mooya Bay. It was just amazing.
Keith Bell of Gold River didn't much like being told what to do.
There was two girls on the Zodiac. One was taking video, and the other one was asking questions, and I thought I was being checked out by the fisheries.
And they're thinking, where did DFO even find you two? You know, so it was difficult to be taken seriously.
Sometimes Luna made it hard for anyone to take anything very seriously.
So touching him is $100,000 a pop right now. What? And we're out here to make that happen. Luna, you're not helping.
Why doesn't somebody just grab the
Because
people that have been out here fishing and everything just come here.
Don't push, Luna.
Unreal.
Do you want to turn off your engine for a moment and I'll see if you'll follow me?
The stewards developed a technique for trying to stop Luna's interactions. They called it ditching him.
It felt really bad, actually, because we would, basically we were tricking him.
Okay, take off.
If he was alongside of a boat and pushing them around and they couldn't get away, if we came alongside, Luna would come alongside our boat. We would, put the fender out or something, entice him to come over. We were sort of saying, hey, come on, we'll play with you, we'll do it. As soon as the other boat was far enough distance, then we would ditch him.
So the contact wasn't stopped, it was just made inconsistent.
That must have been pretty hard on Luna as well. One day have all these people around, everything was great, and the next day nothing, because we'd show up.
And it would just rip your heart out. I don't want to be making your life miserable, but I know this isn't good for you. Or at least I think it's not, because what do we know? I don't know that we know that. Maybe he'll just keep following the tug. I don't know.
Luna apparently figured out that if the stewards saw him coming, they'd dash away. So he developed a more subtle approach, which Suzanne later called stealth whale.
No, Luna. I don't see him.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he's really persistent and tries lots and lots of things, and he's extremely charming. I mean, you might know what's right, and what you think is right, and what you think you're gonna do.
Here he comes. He likes my bracelet sometimes, which is kind of...
And then you get yourself in that situation with him there, and I think it's really tough. I think it's asking people too much to restrict themselves because people are dying for that kind of interaction. I'm not supposed to touch you, sweetie. Oh, we were in a terrible situation. It was pretty obvious from the get-go that this was not going to be a sustainable means of trying to prevent types of interactions, because all we were doing was interacting with him in order to prevent more interactions.
As the stewards saw more of Luna in these situations, they came into conflict with themselves. They were trying to rebuild the wall that Luna had broken. But they loved him when he came through it.
You're pretty, Luna. Yes, you are very pretty.
When you feel like you have that connection, there's nothing else like it. I've never experienced anything like it. You know, I love my dogs. I love all the animals I've ever had. But this was different. This was different.
No one knows how Luna felt this connection, but he seemed to feel something, and it was strong. He was all scarred up from props and other sharp things on boats, but that didn't stop him. And when the U-Chuck was told not to stop to see him anymore, he adapted.
That's when he started traveling with us. It's like, well, you guys aren't going to stop. I'm going to come with you.
He started a sort of commute by wake for 15 nautical miles back and forth from his home waters of Mooya Bay to a place that was way more entertaining, the Gold River Docks. But if it was fun for Luna, it was not fun for fisheries officer Ed Thorburn.
We had to get it out that we were serious about interaction, and we would deal with it.
Well, I was just petting him, like petting his nose and stuff.
Sandy Bond was showing Luna to her mother and father at the dock.
We're standing there, and I knelt down. He came right up to the edge and turned sideways, looking at me. And so I just started petting him because I knew that's what he wanted. Like he was just sort of floating there. And then when I knelt down, he just sort of rolled over and had a look at me. And all of a sudden I heard this, "You there, get your hands off that whale and stand up right now."
It was a police officer coming to take her away. Sandy was charged in court with disturbing a whale. Luna was not called as a witness. After months of worry about the $100,000 fine, Sandy was slapped with a $100 fine. Did she regret it?
No, not at all. It's the best $100 I ever spent.
Luna was determined, and the tough love was inconsistent. Now some people wanted to do anything they could to help him get home. So a noted orca biologist named Ken Balcom, who has studied Luna's family for over 30 years, offered to lead Luna back to his pod with a little less tough and a little more love.
It was just this cosmic coincidence. And we were given $1 million boat, and the donor felt that, well, this would be a real great way to start, you know, the use of the boat. Go up and save that little whale. I'll pay for it.
Ken's idea offered Luna a bit of companionship and the chance at getting back with his family, and it would cost the government nothing. But at the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, Marilyn Joyce's boss turned down the idea because he didn't want Luna to have more contact with people.
Here it was like everything was coming into place. And we were given a boat, a magnificent vessel, and money to do it. But I was told that I would be arrested.
Just tell them to dock as usual. Okay, Luna's coming back.
First minute we got there was mayhem. It was absolutely insane.
That's their business. Ignore the whale. Just ignore him.
It was summer again. Luna was 4 years old. Another batch of young women came north to administer tough love. Now, it was so tough you weren't even supposed to look at them.
We were instructed not to make any contact with Luna, no, especially eye contact, because it's just as bad as touching him, really.
He's got something in his mouth.
Yeah, he's carrying a stick.
When Mike and Suzanne got to Nootka Sound, Luna found their boat at the dock. They were determined to follow the tough love rules, but they saw how hard it was for both people and Luna. Luna kept finding attention one day and then getting ditched the next. And a lot of people along Nootka Sound were saying the whole policy was cruel.
You can't undo what's done. This is like God's gift, and you guys are just blowing it.
Yeah,
This is now a lonely animal that's looking for comfort.
And who made those rules in the first place? And who says they were right?
We had come down a couple times after I had been fined. We're watching him around the boats, looking for someone to pay attention to him. It was very upsetting to see him. And I'm going to start crying.
Then, out of boredom, or enthusiasm, or maybe just chance, Luna started playing with the float planes.
It's a very bad situation.
Why don't you guys get your boat and lead him out of here instead of taking pictures? You're just gonna wreck that, and that's worth a bundle of money.
And that's when I became more insistent that we had to do something, because all you needed was something to happen to one of these planes and somebody get hurt seriously or die, and it would probably spell the demise of Luna.
He said, do everything in your power to get that animal off the seaplane. He said, if you have to touch him, do it. Ed said, keep him safe. He won't get shot.
Now, the stewards had to do exactly what they had been told would hurt him. They had to look at him, and they had to play with him.
We'd gotten so used to him. But then at that moment in time, I popped out and I went, whoa, wait a minute. And I remember thinking, this is so out there. How did it happen that I'm here nursing a killer whale with a fender and it's looking up at me with direct eye contact? It's just, whoa. Good timing, because look what's coming through here. You just ignore the float plane, do you understand? Yeah. You be a good whale and ignore that float plane. Good whales don't play with float planes. Well,
Big boy, reach up.
well, I broke down. I had tears. I said, I'm leaving. I can't do it. I can't do this. I can't be here and be a part of this and then watch this animal die.
Tough love wasn't working. Being friendly was illegal. So now, there was a different idea. Luna's apparent loneliness had captured hearts everywhere, from this nearby school to other nations. Now, many people demanded that Luna be caught and carried south in the hope that his family would find him and take him back. News stories about this campaign were seen in many countries.
Luna seems to be a perfectly normal, healthy...
One of the leaders of this effort lived in the Canadian prairies, a long way from the sea.
We have a river running through Saskatoon that's about as wide as a street, so we don't have any wells there.
But he started a website that quickly registered over 10,000 people.
All over the world, people from from England, from Japan, Africa, you know, every continent, people put effort into reuniting Luna. And that was the moonshot for these people. That was them sending our rocket to the moon. If we could get Luna back to his pod, that's what they set out to accomplish.
Senators from both Canada and the United States got involved, and the U.S. offered $100,000 to help pay for a reunion attempt. At first, the department said no, and people got angry.
Certainly there was a tremendous amount of political pressure. You know, people, would write me, but I just want to spit on you.
Apparently the pressure worked. Suddenly the department changed its mind.
Oh man, Luna's gonna be reunited. This is gonna be the greatest thing ever.
Luna's days in Nootka Sound are numbered. The Department of Fisheries and Oceans says the 4-year-old orca is now a danger to himself and to people.
As I said, we really did hope that Luna could just go on his way without us interfering with him. Who knows what he has on his mind, but anyway, we're making decisions for him now.
The decision was made. Next spring, the department would capture Luna, put him on a truck, drive over 200 miles, and turn him loose near his family. There were cheers in public, but there was trouble behind the scenes. The department's own scientists weren't sure Luna's family would accept him.
Most of us we're not convinced that it would be successful. Some people have a blind faith that there's absolutely no question it'll work. But a lot of us who actually know these animals in great detail from studying them in an aquarium setting, studying them in the wild, we're not so certain.
What would happen if the reunion didn't work?
Enjoy the show and the rest of your day here at Six Flags Marine World.
Marine parks have taught a lot of people about the amazing intelligence and beauty of orcas.
Shuken and Merlin are ambassadors for their species, and it is our responsibility to not only provide them with the best care.
But to many of the people who know orcas in the wild, this looks like a prison. But very quietly, the department made detailed arrangements to send Luna to an aquarium if a reunion attempt was made and didn't work right away.
Due diligence demands that, okay, if we do take this whale down to a highly populated area where there's hundreds of times more boats, more potential problems for people and the whale, what are we going to do about it? And that was the reason behind discussing captivity options.
That was their bottom line. They were going to sell him to an aquarium.
The department didn't say much about the captivity option, but rumors flew like sparks in the wind to Nootka Sound and set a fire among the First Nations.
I mean, that was totally disrespectful for the First Nations. If you want to capture a whale and throw him in a cage or something, it's like, no way.
But now there's a new, unexpected opposition.
Certainly has a lot of cultural and
now Chief Mike McQuina, Ambrose's son, started telling the press Luna shouldn't be moved at all.
Myself and the people of our nations would prefer that nature take its course, meaning that the whale be left alone.
The department spent the winter making capture plans and trying to maintain the wall between species.
Friendship with that whale would have been the worst thing that you could have done to him. And even if he's, frustrated, disappointed, whatever those feelings a whale might have.
I don't think Luna was really into frustration and disappointment. So he took his 3,000 pounds of muscle and charm and went to the slow boats where they'd known him for years.
We'd catch up to the boat and then go right to the front, right to the bow, and he'd put his tail up on there's some teeth on the front of the boat. And he'd just lay there. And he'd fall off and he'd get back up and flip over and get his tail in there again. It was just hilarious.
It was time for Nootka Sound to say goodbye. An unexpected guest had come. He had needed something. People loved him, but didn't agree on how to show it. They couldn't even agree on who he was. Was he a problem or a spirit? Or was he just a lonely kid?
I think that Luna has a very special situation, and he's impacting people in a really grand way.
It was spring. The department brought people, money, and tension to Nootka Sound. And suddenly, Luna started getting what he wanted. He hung out with the crew that was building the net pen. And Ed Thorburn was told to train him with play because the last game would end in the net.
When we get the net pen in place, what we're going to try and do is have him follow me into the net pen, close the gate. But, you know, that's a lot of credibility I'm going to lose with the animal, too. Yeah, I feel guilty now, and I haven't even done it.
People have been asking us the question of, are we going to intervene on capture? We can't really answer that at this time, but the anxiety level is up.
Most people didn't think this little band could stop the department. Ed Thorburn didn't think they'd even try.
My own personal belief is they won't interfere, but they won't assist.
Then Suzanne and I came down to the dock one night 2 days before the capture was scheduled, and here were 2 canoes out on the water. Luna was with them. So was Ed Thorburn. That was a surprise. But we guessed that he'd made a deal with them to let them sing to Luna and say goodbye.
That night, a researcher who'd been listening for months recorded these underwater calls.
So I remember thinking like, this is new. I just remember they were different. They were like, it was more like he was singing himself.
The capture team gathered, over 150 strong. The press was here. Marilyn Joyce was here. The project manager was here.
We're getting pretty close right now. DFO have given the go-ahead to do the capture at this point. So right now, I'm not too anxious.
But as the capture day approached, the department got more and more secretive. Now all of Nootka Sound was suspicious that Luna might not be going home at all.
There was just too many unanswered questions, and everyone kind of knew that once it went in a net, it was going to, well, SeaWorld or another form of captivity. So I think even people that wouldn't have minded that just got put off that the government was lying to them and treating people like morons.
The time came. It was the 16th of June, almost 3 years since Luna showed up in Nootka Sound. Dozens of journalists came to Gold River. Most of them planned to be here just one day. Everyone expected that Luna would be in the pen by nightfall. They were wrong. The Moichet-Muchelet people took the only weapons they had, belief, canoes, and song, and went back out on the water. They hadn't been saying goodbye. They'd been saying hello.
The number one priority was just to keep him away from the pen. Somewhere along the line, it dawned on us that, my God, we're fighting for his freedom. Like we're fighting for the time it seemed like for his very life.
To everyone's astonishment, including the paddlers themselves, Luna followed them 30 nautical miles from the pen. But something else happened that day. As the canoes went through Luna's familiar home territory of Mooya Bay, suddenly Luna started jumping and splashing.
In all these miles, this was the only place he did this. Orcas often slap the water to communicate, but what was he trying to say? Orcas probably don't use anything like what we think of as language, but he was doing all kinds of things to try to get through to us. You know, we were all kind of wrapped up in a story about wildlife management and ancient traditions, but maybe Luna's idea about what was going on was entirely different, and he was shouting at us to pay attention. After that, whenever he slapped the water, I wondered, what are we missing?
first day, we knew we were in trouble. So that's when we decided, okay, this is now a totally different story.
Early the next morning, Ed Thorburn went far from the pen and started bringing Luna back. But the canoes got in the way.
Members in the traditional canoes, we ask you not to interfere with this operation.
Keep out the guys, doing good.
This strikes me as being very ready for action, these boys.
Oh yeah, keep them in the middle.
The press called it a tug of whale, but maybe to Luna it was more like life in a pod. All he ever seemed to want from us was contact, and now every day was full of people who sang and played and looked him in the eye. People here thought this was a fight, but maybe Luna thought he'd already won.
You must take this vessel 100 meters out of this area, or you will be charged. That includes you.
Okay, I will call them first.
The story Mike and Suzanne had thought would be simple to cover wasn't.
No, I'm not right now.
Ed was barking at everyone to keep a distance, as if he was the one in charge. On paper, he was. On the water, he was a bigger guy.
Start your motors and move 100 meters at a fast clip, please. Do as you're asked, please. Start the motor immediately.
On the morning of June 22nd, after a full week of this, Luna chose Ed, and the canoe fell behind. But then, this most social of whales decided to play Bruno in the logs, and the canoe caught up. Ed got him out of the logs, but then Luna had to say hello to a prawn fishing boat, and the canoe came singing along.
That was impressive. I mean, we really were impressed by their determination, and that's when it was solidified to me that they weren't going to go away.
They paddled on and on into the growing wind, an ancient people trying to make a modern legend of sea and spirit with a little whale. But Ed wasn't going to go away either. Beyond an island, he lured Luna back to play, and the canoes couldn't catch up. 2 hours later, Mike and Suzanne climbed a hill near the capture pen just in time to watch Ed lead Luna into the pen.
My chest and my heart, everything was really heavy.
I started to cry because I thought, oh no, we got him.
To me, it was like, holy cow, you know, this is actually going to work.
But this was odd. The gate of the pen wasn't yet closed.
I was willing to kill somebody. That's what I was doing. I was so furious. It was unbelievable.
I know it was a source of frustration, I think, for Ed and the DFO crews and for everybody. It's like, well, you got him in, you got to pull on it. And it's like, no, we're not going to pull it unless we're really certain we're going to get him.
It was so baffling. They had been trying so hard for days to catch him, and all of a sudden here he is in the pen, and we were sure that they would close the gate. But then suddenly, like a Hollywood movie, we hear these canoes in the distance, all this singing, and Luna must have heard them too, because all of a sudden he slips out of the pen and swims off to be with his friends.
It was a Luna flotilla. But then Ed went out, and Luna went over to say hi. And then, out of the flotilla, came a little tin boat driven by a guy named Rudy, and it turned into another little tug of whale.
Suzanne and I were still up on that hill, all caught up in this political fight, which I guess shows you how easy it is to get accustomed to even the most extraordinary things. I mean, there are political fights everywhere. But where else in the world would a little wild whale, by his own choice, take all day and make all this effort and swim, I don't know, 50 nautical miles, just to spend his time with human beings?
Two days later, the department gave up.
Junk food and
was really disappointed.
I was really relieved.
We are a proud nation.
A sense of relief.
It was unbelievable. It was great.
Our grandfathers are smiling at us today.
There was that kind of disbelief,
but also a sense of what's next.
I would have been in those canoes.
We didn't get it done.
I was so proud of them.
And it was a tremendously emotional moment.
Tsuchit is still free.
Woohoo! There's no way that we compromise our position in any way. And our position is let nature take its course and leave Tsuchit alone.
That was exactly what happened. Luna was left alone. Now that the human fight was over, the canoes were taken off the water. Ed no longer went out to play.
And you could feel that feeling. Like, you know, you could just feel he must have, what did I do wrong? How come everybody hates me?
Mike and Suzanne were still here.
We just couldn't leave. The big trouble on Nootka Sound had ended for the press, the department, the First Nations. But not for Luna.
With so many of his friends gone, Luna started making more contact with people who were definitely not his friends. Keith Bell's sailboat had been damaged, and when Luna scared him in a skiff, Keith called the police.
If you're going to get RCMP into any action at all, you got to lay a charge of some kind, and I wanted to lay a charge of attempted murder on the whale.
Well, this is the tiller off the boat, and he broke this.
Whale charged with attempted murder. The press couldn't resist.
It was even in a paper in Montreal, and it came back to Gold River on the Chicago News.
But the RCMP said, unfortunately, they couldn't prosecute Luna because they didn't have jurisdiction.
He said, well, that whale doesn't belong to us anyway. It's an American whale.
Keith was not amused.
I wanted the RCMP to get involved in it because if it was a cougar in our backyard, they would have come and shot the cougar.
This was the sort of thing that made some people want to kill Luna. If he dropped the kicker motor often enough, the bracket would break, and the motor would be gone.
I think most people are afraid of things you don't understand. So they treat it like a rat and shoot it. To hear the amount of people that were willing to go shoot it themselves just because it bumped their kicker bracket or, you know, it says something. I'm not even sure what it says, but it's not good.
And then, when the department told the First Nations to run another one of those tough love stewardship programs that didn't work, Jamie James, who was the fisheries manager for the First Nations, had a different idea.
I thought it was kind of my responsibility to ensure that, you know, go see him and say, you know, you're safe here. You see a friendly face sort of thing, you know. The strong bond that me and Luna had, I think I owed it to him and, you know, let him know I'm still here.
Jamie just ignored the wall between species. Luna would come up and play, and then he'd go off and go fishing, and then he'd come back. No pressure, no ditching.
I was out there on Nootka Sound for about a week filming Jamie with Luna. All this time we had been told that this kind of relationship with Luna was wrong, but this just seemed natural.
During the short time that fall when Jamie was being his friend, Luna got into no trouble at all.
You know,
Luna is a pretty strong character. He learned to survive on his own. He did it all himself. He fed himself, you know, he did everything he could. So, I mean, really, I didn't do too much other than be his friend. That was my greatest honor, is being able to do that.
But the department told him to stop. That next summer, Luna turned 6 years old and things got worse. People knew it couldn't go on this way. Something would happen. Would he be shot or hit by a prop? Would he accidentally spill a kayaker into the cold water and bring tragedy to the people he so wanted to befriend? The department knew the risks were growing, but it did nothing new. Then one day, a First Nations canoe came through Mooya Bay. Mike and Suzanne sat back and watched the most simple but mysterious thing at the heart of the story. A young whale making human friends.
The First Nations thought he was supernatural, and we didn't. But the reality was we all knew we were trying to learn something here that none of us understood.
There's a lot of lessons to be gleaned from this whole adventure. And people have to just take it for what it's worth. It's going to be different for each one.
That day, when the paddlers tried to go to shore, Luna didn't seem to want them to leave. Again and again, he turned the bow away from the beach. Finally, the paddlers got a tow, and they left him. One day, a man named Alan Dunham was crossing a passage, and Luna tried to keep him from going ashore, too.
When I saw this, I thought, this will be the excuse. If he spills this guy, the department will be here tomorrow with cops and nets and guns.
But Alan was calm, and Jamie was nearby. So was Mike.
That's affirmative. You want me over there?
Yeah.
They gathered around Alan. Luna looked as if he was just waiting to see what this meeting was all about. Then Jamie and Luna turned this moment away from disaster so easily. Jamie looked in his eye, and Luna rested, at peace and safe. But the department still had no plan for Luna except to wait and let danger come again. One day during this difficult summer, Mike was at the log sort in Mooya Bay, watching Luna play Bruno in the logs. And then, Stealth Whale came to visit. So Mike zipped over to the dock, hoping Luna would go back to being Bruno. No luck. Finally, Suzanne and Mike pulled the boat all the way out of the water and left Luna waiting for them to come back.
It was just a momentary thing, but suddenly I'd had enough of ditching him. So I broke the rules. I looked at him. And I felt a kind of vertigo. It was like looking over a cliff into time. And I thought, Millions of years these whales have been in the sea, and people have only started getting to know them in the last few generations. Millions of years apart, and we meet at a dock in Muya Bay, and we look at each other and we recognize something. This isn't casual stuff, I thought. This isn't insignificant. I don't know what it is, but it's not insignificant. I looked at him. I looked at that awareness that looked back at me, and I thought, we've treated you with inconsistency. We've treated you with disdain. But still you trust us. How in the world, I thought, will we ever be forgiven by life, by nature, by ourselves, if we let you suffer just because you're trying to be our friend?
You know, journalists are never supposed to get involved in the stories they're trying to cover or try to change the outcome. But for us, it felt unethical not to do something. Here we were we supposed to just stand by and not help this whale?
So we took a deep breath and we took a stand. We started saying that maybe what Jamie had done was right.
Suzanne and Mike asked the department for a permit to work with Jamie, scientists, and the public to keep Luna safe by having boats always near him, like a pod, and by giving him consistent, careful interaction when he needed it.
We just thought that if you could give Luna friendship at boats that were safe, he might not go looking for it at boats that were dangerous.
They sent their request to the department and the press. They brought in a boat Mike could sleep on. Suzanne stayed on land to argue for their proposal. Mike went out to watch Luna and to wait for an answer.
You know, we couldn't really do anything until they gave us a permit, but I thought at least I can keep watch for him.
Any sign of Luna?
No, not yet. He should come and say hello pretty quick.
So in the daytime, I would watch from a distance, and at night, I'd anchor, put down the hydrophone, and listen.
And soon they got a message from the department. It was very simple. If they got caught interacting with Luna, it said, they could be charged with a crime.
You are trying to assume you know what they need because you can give it to them, versus trying to understand that these are intelligent social creatures and they have their own needs. We just don't understand them. So why would we assume that we know how to fill that gap for them and that it will be better for them? Boy.
Luna challenged some of the deepest things people believe about who humans and animals are. Mike and Suzanne weren't just watching all this anymore. They were part of it now. In November, the Moichet Muchalat people held a potlatch for Ambrose McQuina 4 years after his death. This was the official end of mourning. And now many people believed Luna would disappear.
Right after the memorial potlatch for my grandfather Ambrose, a lot of us knew that he was gonna go, but we didn't know how he was gonna go. We didn't know if he was gonna die or if he was just gonna leave the territory.
I can foresee the time when he figures, well, I've done my best, you folks aren't learning anything, it's time for me to go. He's giving us every chance. You know, he's saying, here, come on, check it out, you know? Like, it's still a beautiful world.
Mike and Suzanne kept trying to get that permit.
The department was kind of waiting, and the First Nations were letting go. So Suzanne and I went to offices and talked to bureaucrats and scientists who listened politely. And we said, all he needs is some kind of consistent contact to keep him safe. Why not give him a chance?
Again and again, the answer was no.
In terms of the proposal, moving to that next level of engagement, certainly we were really reluctant to move down yet another step of creating an even closer bond with people.
West Coast, Vancouver Island North. Storm warning upgraded to hurricane force wind warning. Southeast gales 40 to storm force 50 knots with local hurricane force winds.
Winter came to Nootka Sound.
A fisherman told me right there on the dock, he said, Luna's going to be killed this winter. And I said, look, somebody goes out there and shoots Luna, they're going to get caught, they're going to get arrested. The guy said, no, they aren't. There's lots of bad weather out there. Nobody's ever going to find out.
After the storm, Mike went back out to Mooya Bay. Luna wasn't there. He spent the night, but there were no calls on the hydrophone.
In the morning, Nootka Sound looked really big and empty. And I realized that for Suzanne and me, life had been completely transformed by our affection for a little whale. Maybe it was that bond we so lightly call friendship that grows like mist, but holds like iron.
He went looking far from Mooya Bay, out toward the open sea. Then he thought he saw a spout. He aimed the camera. He slowed the boat, and Luna came right over.
The truth of that moment is that when he came over, I sang to him. I was so happy I sang, and it's a good thing it wasn't recorded. Then I thought, we humans don't even understand each other, and we still do what we can. I mean, that's what it's all about. So I thought, well, if I have to be some kind of Luna outlaw to try to keep him safe, that's what I'll do. I leaned across the wall. In that cold water, his skin was warm.
All of my education and training involves things that you can somehow quantify. But there are these uncomprehendables almost, you know, these things out there that something's going on. Something is going on in an interconnectedness of a lot of life on this planet. If we're going to get at that big sort of unmeasurable thing out there as to what are the connections in the species, I think he had it. He was just as curious about us as we were about him.
Over the next few weeks, Mike smuggled friendship into Nootka Sound. He knew he might be caught, but at least when Luna was with him, Luna was safe.
Getting to know Luna was not like one of those fairy tales where people and animals just sort of meet and start chatting. Up close, Luna was if anything, he was more mysterious than he was at a distance. He was a complete life, you know, full of awareness and complexity, as deep and unfamiliar as the sea itself. When I talked and Luna slapped his tail, neither of us had a clue what the other meant. We were like a couple of kids, you know, alone on a playground with no language to help us, who played anyway, because what we shared mattered.
to think that the age of exploration was over, and that there wasn't much left of strangeness and beauty on this planet that humans hadn't already seen. Thankfully, I was wrong. The people of Nootka Sound who looked into Luna's eyes went far into the edge of the unknown when they tried to be friends with a whale. On the 5th of March, the bilge pump quit in Mike's boat, and the rain filled it halfway up with water, which made it very heavy. With the motor roaring, he could only go 8 knots. Luna loved that blast and splash, and he surfed along for at least a mile. But then Mike had to leave Luna for a few days for a family visit. Then, on the day Mike was supposed to come back, a newspaper asked him for a photograph, and he watched the tape again and stopped it right there.
So the last time I saw Luna was the last time everyone saw Luna. It was an accident. He got too close to a big propeller. But I'll never get over that I promised I'd keep watch for him. But I wasn't there.
The day after Luna died, Mike and I went out to Muya Bay with Donna Schneider, who had loved him since that first July day so long ago. We just kept thinking that Luna was going to do stealth whale right up through the flowers.
It's almost as if an alien came down and we shot it, you know, because it was blocking traffic.
But that was one of the worst days of my life.
Just the bottom of my heart just fell. I just, God.
To Suzanne and me, this last journey was sad, but it was wonderful. Suzanne and Donna organized it, but it was 3 months after Luna died, and we had no idea so many people would come all the way to Nootka Sound, just to go out to Muya Bay and throw flowers for a little whale.
This is his place, and soon we're going to slow down, come to a stop, and give us all a chance to think about Luna, Suki, our friend.
To me, it was like an Irish wake, you know, the best kind of farewell. You laugh, you cry, you laugh again, and you're really glad you knew him.
He has become a part of me. In that sense, he lives on, you know, like he made a difference. He made a difference in this life here.
But I think everybody that's been connected with Luna, it is something special. Just the experience of knowing that whale was worth everything that happened.
He was a gift to the whole town, you know, for the kids just to come down and see him.
And I will never, ever forget that. That will be with me forever.
In telling this story, first of all, I want to let you know this is one of the many ways for me to remember Luna, and it's about the easiest ways. One night, and this must have been about 11 o'clock or something like that, and totally dark out. We had a little bit of flashlight. And you know the phosphorescence in the water that glow when they're disturbed, right? So we had Luna coming with us, and oh man, it was just the amazing thing you ever see. He comes up beside the boat and he's just swimming next to us while we're bringing him over, and he's just glowing in the water. You didn't see Luna, you saw the outline of Luna. And it was just the amazing thing you could ever see. It was like Luna dancing in the sky with the stars, man. So, you know, every time at night, if I think of Luna, I'll look up in the stars.
All lives end, but the best leave gifts. Millions of years had made Luna different from us. But he had come through that wall because of what we shared. He too had carried that need for others across the greatness of time because it is necessary, not optional. As Luna taught us just by who he was, this thing we call friendship is bigger than we know.
You see him out there anywhere?
I don't. I thought he was out there by the point. Grows up, how are you going to explain all this to him?
I'm gonna tell my son about the greatest thing that's ever happened to me in my life.